right, folks. All right, what's going on? I am here, though not under the conditions that I wanted to be here. A little bit late, a little bit behind the power curve. Actually, ran into a keyboard issue. Keyboard issue. You know how it is with Macs. So my keyboard on my Mac won't work, and therefore I can't log into my iMac. So I have an iMac, right? So I'm on my MacBook right now at the moment, and my mic and all of that stuff is not hooked up. So this is the built-in mic on the MacBook. Now, as an aside, I ordered a little wireless Logitech keyboard, not thinking, but I need to be wired in order to get past the password screen in order to connect that wireless keyboard via Bluetooth. So it's like double whammy. Now I have to figure out a means to get some kind of wired keyboard to be able to log into the iMac. It's insane. I don't know why it's like this. I do not know why it's like this. But anyway, all good. Still here. What's going on, folks? Let's see. We have some people in the building holding it down. Appreciate it without a doubt. Salute to you, Alexander, in the mix. Appreciate having you here again, Alexander, without a doubt. And of course, salute to Dan, the man holding it down. You're funny, Dan says. Hooray for our commanding officer. Appreciate you, Dan. Dan, yeah, great to have you here, buddy, as always. Then we have Flat Boxing. Flat Boxing in the mix. I know it's been going down with Flat Boxing, holding it down here on the July 4th, having a good time over here. Hey, got nothing but love for you, my man. Flat Boxing, baby. Then Rodolfo Rivera Jr. in the mix. I appreciate you, Rodolfo Rivera Jr. Thanks for being here. Of course, of course. I know it's been a lot of dialogue going on. I'm your biggest Dan. That is funny. Our fan got you there, Black Box, and I know typing has been an issue right here today. So salute to everyone who is here. Salute to everyone. But Rodolfo, appreciate you being here as mentioned. Everyone who jumped into the mix here, you are appreciated, certainly. But we're here. Happy July 4th, Independence Day. So good times. You know, we have a lot of things going on this day. A lot of people barbecuing, a lot of people joining in the festivities, celebrating all of that good stuff. Hey, we do the same around here. You know what I'm saying? So cheers, salute. Cheers to you all for that regard. So, we are here to talk about boxing, of course, because we love to talk about boxing history, and that seems to be a point of interest without a doubt. So, boxing history, and you know, July 4th is a historic day as it relates to boxing. You might have actually seen it on the ESPN Plus broadcast or ESPN broadcast in general for the Jared Anderson contest when he took on Charles Martin this past weekend, this past Saturday to be exact. But they were talking about the fact that this was taking place in Toledo, Ohio. I guess that's where Jared is from. And they were highlighting some of the bigger fights that have happened on July 4th, or bigger fights that had happened in Toledo actually, but it just so happens we were close to July 4th. And one they were noting was the July 4th, 1919 Toledo, Ohio contest between none other than the Manasseh Mauler, Jack Dempsey, and Jess Willard with the world heavyweight title on the line. So that was one of their main highlights right there. And of course, we had to talk about it because we are here on July 4th, and that is a historic fight that took place on July 4th. And of course, we've had some over the years, some even in modern times or, you know, around the date, but we're going to stick with the old school. We have a lot of modern talk already going down, so we are going to stick with the old school. But that wasn't the only one. There were some others that took place on this date as well. So we're going to jump into the mix with that. It seemed to be a pretty interesting date for both Jack Dempsey and Jack Johnson. So Dempsey also fought Mike Gibbons on July 4th in Shelby, Montana, and that is what we know to be the bankrupt fight, as in the town in itself was bankrupt in the aftermath because they had a very low turnout by comparison to what the expectations were, and then factoring in Dipsy's purse, of course, what went into actually putting the event together, as well as Gibbons, etc., promoters all, yeah, it ended up being a big loss, especially for the town. So that is another one that took place involving Dipsy, but it makes sense. It makes sense. If you don't have it all together, then don't jump in the mix right there. Don't jump in that pond if you're not ready. Salute to the Bonds in the mix as well, holding it down. He's dropped in, show some love. Bonds, we're talking about July 4th and some of the fights that have taken place on this day. I am illuminated. I have a light here as well. So on the laptop here today, on the MacBook, the main computer can't log into it at the moment. It's crazy, insane stuff. Alexander says at Walgas, Joe Rivers was a great lightweight title fight on the 4th. Okay, at Walgas versus Joe Rivers. I haven't seen that one. Know of at Walgas for sure. Joe Rivers, not so much. Good one right there. Alexander Campbell, that might be one we'll have to look up and talk about because it would be a very interesting one. So, yeah, doing it on the Mac there, the Boz. I know that Benny Leonard fought someone on July 4th in what was a big fight as well. I believe the lightweight title might have been on the line in that contest. So Benny Leonard, I know he's had a significant fight on July 4th. Definitely worthwhile. Salute to Blake Gallimore in the mix. Says fact, Dempsey only fought one dimensional and only looked good against big slow guys who just stood and took a beating. Put him in with boxers movers. He struggled or lost. Oh, Dempsey. Oh, salute to you, Blake Gallimore. Speaking in regards to the great Jack Dempsey, aka the Manasseh Mauler. Oh yeah. Vod says Dipsy, resident Dipsy hater. That is funny. That is funny. But yeah, good stuff right there, Blake Gallimore. Yeah, Willard, he was one of those guys who was pretty awkward and slow, not super technical, big, strong guy who could endure punishment, could take a lot of it and try and dish out some of his own. He had a pretty solid straight right. That was probably his best punch, his straight right there. But not on this day. Not on this day at all. Dan says, battling Nelson KO's Gans 21 round on July 4th, 1908. Okay, cool. That happened. That went down July 4th, 1908. Where did that go down at, Dan, if you know? Where did that go down? I know I had seen I remember the two or them fighting multiple times. I was trying to recall where that one went down at. If you could share, if you know that off top, and then Alexander mentions Leonard, Kansas. So Benny Leonard versus Rocky, Kansas. Rocky, Kansas. That's a name you don't hear often right there. I won't profess to know a ton about Rocky, Kansas myself. Former world champion, of course. But that being said, Rocky, Kansas is one of those guys who doesn't very much get mentioned at all these days. He, from what I understood, had a pretty tough resume from what I've seen and looking at his resume and some of the guys he was in with. Goes a bit under the radar. On this channel, the only thing I've done on him is one of those deep fake videos where you can see his pictures move in some capacity, kind of bring it to life a little bit, but haven't done an actual video detailing his career or anything of that nature. I don't believe a short either, but there may be a short video out there on Rocky, Kansas, but certainly one of those boxers who was an underrated top flight boxer during his era, and he doesn't get mentioned a ton these days. I know he's been mentioned on the Hardline Boxing Talk channel, probably Scrapbook Boxing as well. Salute to those guys, but certainly one worth mentioning right there. One worth mentioning. The Boz, Al at Walgas was as tough as they come. Without a doubt, there's the Boz. Super tough fighter right there. Paul Bright, salute to you, Paul Bright, in the building. He says, hey, everybody, happy 4th. Happy 4th to you, Paul Bright. We appreciate having you here, buddy. Yeah, we're here to talk about some July 4th fights that went down. Coleman, California is what Dan said as far as that fight between Joe Gans and Battling Nelson, where Gans was stopped. So salute to you, Paul Bright. Yeah, we're just jumping in the mix. So hey, right on time. Right on time. The Mecca, Dan says. So yeah, salute. Thanks for sharing that, Dan. Thanks for sharing. Didn't Dipsy fight Tommy Gibbons on July 4th? Yes, the Boz, he did. This was that fight in Montana, and it didn't quite go as planned as far as the financials because the turnout wasn't quite what they expected, at least the expectation there. So that was a kind of bad move, or at least they overshot themselves thinking that they could bring in, the crowd or bring in the fanfare or whatever it may be in Shelby, Montana. Didn't quite work out. I guess that's the most famous Montana fight, at least that I can think of, and probably one of the reasons we don't often see anything in Montana, especially from a boxing standpoint. But yes, Gibbons put that world heavyweight title on the line. I mean, Dempsey put that world heavyweight title on the line against Gibbons, and of course, Dempsey was victorious. But hey, got to take a title shot how you can get it. I had heard that Gibbons didn't get paid for that fight. Maybe someone knows definitively or for certain, but that's what I heard out there, which is pretty crazy, right? Nelson Gans fought in Chicago. Salute to you, John. John Bardelli. Appreciate you being here, buddy. Salute for dropping that info. Nelson Gans fought in Chicago. Okay, good stuff. Good stuff. I wonder if that same one we were discussing. Excuse me. So yeah, appreciate you dropping in, Don. Salute to you. Everyone show John some love. I don't recall seeing you drop in before, John, but certainly you are appreciated. Thanks and welcome to add to the dialogue that we have on these historic boxers because, hey, we love talking history. It's a great thing, so we appreciate it. Rocky, Kansas, awesome, great champion from Buffalo, New York. Salute to you, Dan. To Buffalo, dropping cousins dropping gems right there, nuggets. So Rocky, Kansas is from Buffalo, New York. You'd wonder why, hey, how do you end up being Rocky, Kansas, considering he's from Buffalo? One of the interesting things in boxing. Maybe we'll find out. Maybe someone out there knows. Dan, maybe you know. But essentially, great fighter right there, representing black boxing in the mix. Salute to Poland Ball. Poland Ball 69 in the building. What's going on? Poland Ball says Dipsy had a better resume against light heavies than heavies. Okay, better resume against light heavies than heavies. Interesting. I had to dig a bit into that. I know, yeah, he had some Gibbons being one of them who started more in that rank and rose up. Yeah, wouldn't be surprised there if that is the case. I know John Lester Johnson was another one he defeated, who was more in that rank right there. And then we know of course, Tunney being one of the premier opponents on his resume who had moved up to heavyweight at that particular time. So yeah, that is a good one. Of course, George Carpentier, who was great light heavyweight, moved up, and Dempsey ended up taking him on without a doubt. So that is a good one right there. So interesting assessment there, Polar Ball. Dempsey against some light heavyweights. He had some pretty good ones, pretty good wins over guys who rose from those ranks for sure. Some big names too. Good stuff right there. Paul Bright, salute to you once again. Dan says Ed Walgas is one of the toughest ever, without a doubt. Without a doubt. The boss, sad what happened to Ad, but we already covered that. Adolphus is his name. He was a German American. Good stuff right there. Good stuff you're sharing right there, boss. Beagle, welcome, Beagle. Appreciate you dropping by, buddy. Beagle's in the building. Salute to you, Beagle. Like and subscribe for sure to the man Beagle. But we appreciate you being in dialogue as always, Beagle. Says checking in to wish you happy 4th from all. Oh, happy 4th from the bar. Gotcha. The degenerate dog. That is funny right there, Beagle. Hey, appreciate you. Happy 4th to all. Hey, give yourself a cheers, nods, kudos, and a drink. Tip the scales, baby. Good stuff. Blake Gallimore says, yes, July 4th, 1923, Gibbons versus Dempsey, even fight. A lot say Gibbons won, boss. Good stuff right there, Blake Gallimore. Good stuff. Yeah, that is what we were referring to as the bankrupt fight, or the fight that put the town of Shelby, Montana into bankruptcy. And of course, I think that's probably the highlight as far as sporting events that have taken place there. I could be wrong, but certainly boxing. Don't recall anything boxing related taking place in that town or anything around there since then. So very, very much a highlight type fight, and one of those fights that reigns in and remains in boxing history, in the halls of boxing history. One of those we can recollect on and just think about some of the feats and some of the things that took place during that period, and of course tied to Jack Dempsey, one of the most popular boxers of all time during that period. So makes sense. Rodolfo Rivera Jr., Famous Wolf. Rodolfo, his nickname is now Famous Wolf. We're gonna keep it right there, Rodolfo. Let's see. Blake Gallimore says he was supposed to fight Greb, but took on Gibbons, who just had been destroyed by Greb twice. Oh yes, yes, he was supposed to fight Harry Greb in on that particular day. That would have been a nice one. That would have been a good, very interesting contest right there. Had Dempsey taken on Harry Greb, the Pittsburgh Windmill, and it was seemingly a fight that could be made. I know that money was there. From what I recall, they had the financial backing. As a matter of fact, Greb had secured the venue for it to go down in Pittsburgh. Actually, I do recall the fact that they were going to actually, if it would have taken place in Pittsburgh, where the town wouldn't have gotten bankrupt, they were actually going to build a stadium specifically for that fight in a similar capacity to what they had to do for this Tommy Gibbons fight. But yes, it ended up not being the great Harry Greb, who we know is one of the great fighters in the history of the sport, former world middleweight champion, but very much capable, well beyond the middleweight ranks. We just did not get that fight. It would have been a good one to have seen for sure. And I know we talk about it. There's several ways it could have went, and it would have made for very entertaining dialogue had we actually gotten that contest. But regardless of such, we still get a lot of good dialogue surrounding it to this day, because there are varying opinions as it relates to what would have happened, who would have won, how the contest would have gone. So that's what makes boxing fruitful. That's what keeps us wondering and hoping and relishing on the fantasy fights, the potential matchups that could have been. And that's strong. You need that in sports. That's one of the things you certainly want to have. You want to have that strong connection to the what ifs, the possibilities, and that is certainly one of them. Greb Dempsey. Poland Ball says, weird fact, Dempsey low blow, given so much in their fight that when one of the reporters asked him about it the day after, Gibbons took off his pants and exposed his injured privates. Oh, interesting. Interesting right there. TMI, some would say. It's TMI right there, Poland Ball. But hey, that's interesting. I didn't know of that one for sure. So look at their gems and nuggets dropped right there, folks. You heard it right there. You heard it right there. Hey, that's a way of showing that I guess you got low blow a hell of amount of times. So interesting stuff right there, Poland Ball. Interesting stuff, without a doubt. Hey, we give you stories here, not just myself, but others dropping some things that they may have read that may be out there. So definitely appreciate you sharing that, Poland Ball. And for what it's worth, I would say. Dan says, but Butte, Montana was one of the toughest boxing towns in the world. Mining fight, Ketchel come out of there. Okay, Butte, Montana. Good stuff right there. Hey, dropping gems right there, Dan. Good stuff. You're right. There were other areas in Montana then. So Montana is known for some other stuff, not just that, without a doubt. Not just that Dempsey fight, but I guess probably one of the marquee, most known. I had to look into that actually. I had to look into that. How often do we think of Montana? I don't think of Montana very often. I do know someone from Montana two people actually. Well, no, one person. I have a coworker from Montana. Did somewhat I know her husband's from Montana, so Montana. Let's look into Montana boxing history. That might be a good one to definitely check out and get an understanding of what has all gone down in Montana. That would be very interesting, along with say Maine, another state that we don't know for boxing really, but we know there was a famous fight that went down there in the state of Maine. So some of those obscure states that you don't really know for sports to that degree, or at least boxing, just thinking about it, or at least on this day or this time frame. But it would be interesting. Would be interesting. Dan, regarding Rocky Kansas as Rocky, the first Rocky, without a doubt. Yep, very much an obscure fact right there. Or Rodolfo Polenball, he did the same to Sharkey. Oh yeah, Jack Sharkey, low blow Jack. I know he caught Jack with the sort of blindside shot that took him out while he was complaining to the referee in their contest. Jack Sharkey, very good fighter right there. Had some ups and downs in his career, had some lapses, but on his best day could hang with the best ever former world heavyweight champion of Lithuanian descent. No, not Dempsey's fault. The heavyweight division sucked back then. So in the 20s, well, there were some guys around who would have been a good test for him. A guy by the name of Harry Wills for sure is one. And that contest we did not get, but he would have been the prime and optimal opponent for Dempsey during that period. Of course, that is a fight we did not get right there. And I spoke on it. A lot of us have spoke on it. And you can actually check out the video on the 86 Boxing channel that is dedicated to Harry Wills, and it dives into it to a higher degree than what I'm mentioning here. And it speaks on that contest and the potential of it happening. That would have been a very, very good contest right there. Very good matchup that would have carried us to this point in heavyweight history. And we would have gotten a lot of love shown from a man, Harry Wills, who goes a bit under the radar these days. But hey, one we would have seen. Sure would like to get in that ring with Boz. Hey, let's set up a fight. 86 Boxing presents the first annual. Firpo was no light heavy for sure. Yeah, Firpo, Luis Angel Firpo, the Argentine slugger or big puncher, but certainly heavyweight, one of the big punching heavyweights of all time, especially during that period. You got to see him apply his trade, and knockouts were his name in game. As a matter of fact, that Firpo versus Dempsey contest, certainly one of the most exciting that you can think of dating back in history, especially considering we have it on video. But that contest featured, I think, 7 knockdowns in the first round, something to that tune. But it was a hell of a contest right there. We'll drag them out there. I think it was 2 rounds. It only ended up going 2 rounds, but those guys were throwing haymakers, Dempsey and Firpo. Dempsey got knocked out of the ring, got back in the mix, and he was able to end up finishing Firpo. But excellent contest if you haven't seen it. Jack Dempsey versus Luis Angel Firpo, Argentine slugger, as mentioned, but he was in with some heavy hitters over his career as well. He had some pretty solid wins. Matter of fact, yeah, he was in with Harry Wills. He lost to Harry Wills. I believe he stopped Willard, if I'm not mistaken. I believe he did stop Willard, or at least he was in there and gave him all he can handle. But I believe he stopped him. As a matter of fact, that's one of Willard's losses. Correct me if I'm wrong there. Correct me if I'm wrong. Alexander Campbell, salute to you, says Fulton, Carl Morris, Firpo were pretty big. Certainly. Carl Morris, very big guy. I think he was around 6'4", 6'5"-ish. But he was heavier, I know, than Fulton, who was a 6'5", somewhere in that range, 6'5", 6'5.5". You've seen him mentioned in that mix right there. But we have a video out there on Fulton. One of his opponents or rivals, I guess you can say, was Carl Morris. This was a big guy who was actually pretty solid. As mentioned, he was heavier. He might have been in that 240, 50 range. I don't recall off top, but certainly Carl Morris was one of those names that doesn't ring many bells, but he was a pretty solid fighter. Now, as it relates to he and Fulton, they fought several times. He beat Fulton a couple of times before Fulton finally got a victory over him. There was also some rumors and allegations surrounding sort of, I guess, mob behavior or actions, or not even necessarily mob, but more so definitely some backers having some types of interest that would interfere in the fight going down in a legitimate manner in terms of Morris, and especially even in some of those contests with Fulton, where he may have gotten a nod he shouldn't have gotten. I don't want to just say it was the mob entirely, but certainly some questionable behavior or questionable judging surrounding it. But of course, we see that today as well. It's always pretty interesting how that goes down. That's one thing that is kind of just maintained throughout history. A lot of questionable judging and all of that stuff. So it is what it is. We're gonna get a Gallimore versus Boz contest at some point. We're gonna get it. We're gonna make it happen, folks. Let's start to get the box office ready. We're gonna get the Boz versus Blake Gallimore. Well, we want to do a let's make it a 6 rounder. We can do a 6 rounder. I think that will suffice right there. You want to do 4 rounders? We can make it happen. Let's do it. We'll broadcast live here on the 86 Boxing Channel. Let us know if you're down for that, and we'll set up something. We might have to do pay-per-view to make sure that everyone can get their proper share and get their purse that they demand or command. So we can make it happen there, Paul Bright got his money on Boz. Oh, we even have bets going on. Let's connect with FanDuel, all of that stuff. Boz versus Blaze. Okay, Rodolfo Rivera Jr. Rodolfo, I'm going to let you be in charge of marketing this thing. We're going to make it happen. Let's go, Rodolfo. Let's make it happen. Dan says, Luis Firpo, Sam Fulton, Willard, huge monsters. Tunney was a big heavyweight. He filled out 195 solid muscle. No Dempsey fought heavyweight. Yeah, good stuff right there. But yeah, Tunney, yeah, he did fill out when he got there to the heavyweight ranks. So it ended up working out for him in that regard. He put on the weight in the proper manner, which is always the more advisable means or way to go about it, to put on the weight in the proper manner, though, and that usually bodes well for a fighter. Doesn't always go down like that, but certainly that is the more ideal way of going about it, to put it on in a proper manner. 1 sec here. I'm gonna hook up. Sorry, I gotta hook up this little light to make sure it's properly working. All right, we're good to go. But yes, good points right there, Dan. So yeah, Tunney did fill out for heavyweight, and he had some work that he was doing there. He did some decent work there. Of course, Dempsey wins being his biggest wins there in the heavyweight ranks, but certainly he didn't have a long stint there at heavyweight. So I know some rank him in the top ranks of heavyweights, but certainly his stint in heavyweight wasn't a long one compared to others. So I would more ideally associated him with being, one of the best lightweights. But I guess taking into account the time he did spend at heavyweight, I guess you can make an argument that, hey, he was one of the best heavyweights without a doubt, even though his stint there wasn't the longest. And he put in a lot of work at light heavyweight for sure. He did around that weight. So, hey, but it is what it is. Facebook, hey, son, happy 4th to your mother. So my mother dropped in the building as well. Appreciate you dropping by, showing some love. Happy 4th. Appreciate you dropping in. As always, wouldn't last 30 seconds, right? Because you're out in 20 seconds. Vibes, we got a fight going here. But yes, my mother, appreciate you. Happy 4th to you as well. Happy 4th to everyone. July 4th, Independence Day. The fireworks are going off here right now. Not as many as it will be here in a few hours, so you're probably not hearing them to that degree. But I know they're going to be lighting it up here within a few hours. So it's going to be very, very live, because we're not dark here yet. It's not dark here yet, but we're getting there. So they're gonna be lighting it up. It's gonna be live. I might have to go out there and kind of check out what's going on. Maybe see some of the fireworks they're gonna be shooting downtown DC. You know, they love to show some love. Independence Day, baby. The bio says Grab may have fought some heavyweights, but he never weighed more than 165. Don't think he'd be approved to fight for a world title. Oh no, I think he would be approved to fight for a world title there, Boz. I'm pretty sure he might have gotten in that 170 range, but he would be approved to fight for it. Certainly, they would make it happen. They would most certainly make it happen. I don't think he would have been denied because of his weight, because that is just the nature of fighting back then. There were often guys who fought well above their original weight or their more, I guess, established weight that we had seen them fight. So I think that Grab would have been in that mix. They should have made it happen. I don't think it would have altered anything. Now, yeah, of course, it's always it is a fantasy fight at this point in terms of thinking about what would have happened. How would he have handled an aggressive Dempsey throwing it all on the line? Very interesting question. But we've had some different assessments, different things shared from individuals who showed, hey, there are conceivable ways in which Grab could have gotten the victory, certainly. And there are certainly conceivable ways in which Jack Dempsey could have remained victorious and the reigning champ. Poland Ball, how would Grab not be approved for a world title fight when Dempsey fought Carpentier, who weighed the same as Grab? Yeah, good point. He and Carpentier were not in the same weight class at that particular time. Carpentier, certainly one who considered and has fought at heavyweight, but when you think about the career of George Carpentier, it's certainly not his heavyweight career. You think about his time as light heavyweight. I believe he started probably in the middleweight ranks, somewhere around there. As a matter of fact, he started very young, and yeah, that's an example right there. They approved of that fight. Big money was on the line, and of course, I mentioned big money would have been on the line with Greb and Dempsey. Of course, I don't know if it would have been $1 million gate like the Carpentier Dempsey, but certain circumstances brought that about. But had he fought Greb, yeah, money wouldn't have been an issue without a doubt, because the funding was there. It was most certainly there. Blake Gallimore, he fought to 172, same as Carpentier, but that's what you know. Oh yeah, he fought to 172. I didn't know if he did, but Carpentier certainly didn't do so well, and he was a world champion. True, true. Yeah, Carpentier. Yeah, he didn't handle. Yeah, Dempsey was too much for him. Certainly, different style of fighter than Grab, from all indications. Different style of fighter, so certainly probably wouldn't have played out in a similar script. But I think the aggressiveness and, of course, the power, the offense of Jack Dempsey certainly would have been something to watch. That would have been something that would have likely been a key point of emphasis, and one of the things that would have been, I guess, what would have troubled Harry Greb in that contest. As far as just outboxing him, yeah, I don't know that Dempsey would have outboxed Greb. It would come down, I would think, to Dempsey connecting, the sort of veracity he brought to the table at that particular time. We saw him come out super aggressive, gunning specifically for the knockout, would have made things interesting. But that being said, Greb was a tough handful for many, for sure. So it wouldn't have been an easy contest for him. Definitely one that piques interest for sure. Greb versus Gibbons in 1922 was supposed to be a title eliminator. Greb won, and Dempsey said he was next instead. He fought Gibbons. Indeed, indeed. So certainly that was one that should have happened. That is the case. Matter of fact, one of the videos that I have on the channel, one of the more recent ones, is one where Greb specifically was quoted, and he goes into detail as to what he thought going into the Gibbons fight, and how he was able to pull off victory, what he thought he would do in a contest with Jack Dempsey and his expectations or the approach that he would have taken. So he didn't approach it from a standpoint of him just guaranteeing victory or anything of that nature. He knew it would be tough for him, but he was very confident and felt strongly about what he was capable of doing that would have been encountered to the best of what Jack Dempsey had to offer. So very interesting contest right there. Very interesting contest. Poland is another anti-Dempsey guy. Okay, Carpentier wasn't grabbed. He actually ducked grab. Yeah, that would have been an interesting contest right there. That would have been an interesting one. Certainly. Dan says Ketchel lost a few fights in Butte, Montana. One though, one tough town, great boxing town. Okay, good stuff right there. Butte, Montana, babe. Butte, Montana. Let's do it. Let's go. Butte, Montana. That's worthy of a visit right there. If you go into Montana, gotta hit up Butte. I wonder if they have any placards or anything of that nature that's symbolizing and remembering some contests that took place there. Much like Shelby, I would assume they may have some type of placard or whatever representing the contest that took place between Dempsey and Givens. But Butte, Montana. Good stuff right there, Dan. Dropping some knowledge. Uh, dropping some knowledge. Critiquing is it hating is just the fact that Jack ducked grab. Hey, the fight didn't happen. I will say that the fight did not happen. It would have surely been a good one. I felt, as mentioned, the money was there. The money was there. Uh, it's arguable the most overlooked duck in boxing history. Duck my ass right there, the boss. Hey, yeah, I feel you. Yeah, duck. I don't know. Hey, duck can be a strong word in the boxing world. Whether he just blatantly ducked him, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. But I will say that the money was there. The money was certainly there. The venue was there. The backing was there. Everything seemed to be there. And it didn't happen. It didn't happen. So do with that as you wish. Now, as it relates to Harry Wills, yeah, it seemed like Harry Wills was blatantly ducked for sure. But Harry Wills was someone who was in the heavyweight division and the money was there, same thing. That seemed to be a pretty much a duck right there, without a doubt. The grab one, yeah, whether there was, I don't think there was any fear there from a Dempsey perspective as far as him fearing Harry grab. But I do think that as it relates to Dempsey and a potential Harry grab matchup, that wasn't really, he probably wasn't going to look good in that matchup. It would have certainly raised some eyebrows in that sense because it's hard to look good against Harry Greb just in general, for any fighter, even those we consider elite level boxers, a la the likes of Tunney. If Tunney couldn't look good against him, it's hard to see Jack Dempsey looking good against him. So maybe that's something that factored into it as well. It was kind of a no-win situation in that sense. Maybe he wouldn't have got the credit, this being Dempsey, if he were to pull it off. And if he didn't pull it off, then we know that could never let that down. But it would add to the greatness of one Harry Greb for sure. So it's a very interesting one right there. Very interesting for sure. Blake says 100% he ducked him. All right there, Blake says 100%. Dempsey fought the loser of the title elimination bout, title eliminator between Greb and Givens. How's that not ducking? Hey, good point right there, Poland Ball. Good point right there. People, hey, think about it from a logical standpoint. I guess you're right. How is that not? I mean, he did fight the loser. That is a good point right there. Certainly, I can't argue against the fact that happened, and we know that fight didn't sell. So, good point right there. Lakers get ready to go again. It seems. Yeah. Givens was more a heavyweight than Greb. Well, I guess you could say so. Yeah, he may have had more contests around there. He started in the light heavyweight ranks for sure. But yeah, I don't know if it was the heavyweight factor that is the overall reason or dynamic by which or as it relates to the fight not happening. We know that, we have videos of guys out there who fought heavyweights and all that stuff. I always mention the Mickey Walker videos out there, him going up against Max Smelling and him taking on Jack Sharkey. Mickey Walker, he started as a welterweight, so he was a welterweight who went up and fought at heavyweight, and he wasn't a full-fledged heavyweight when he fought those two guys. And of course, he found out the hard way against Max Smelling, and he fought a good, tough contest against Jack Sharkey. Both of those contests, he was the smaller guy, but hey, he did what he could do, especially in the Sharkey fight. But the power of one Max Smelling, who is an underrated fighter in some regards, he doesn't get mentioned amongst those top level heavyweights as much as he probably should. The Black Line of the Rhine, very underrated fighter right there. But his power came to play. Very good boxer. I mean, he had decent pop, all that good stuff. So Max knocked out Mickey Walker, who was up there fighting in the heavyweight ranks, and he sent them a strong message. So we've seen guys doing it. I don't know if it was the fighting at heavyweight, etc., that was the factor, because back in the day, you had a lot of guys who would fight well above their weight. George Budge Byers, I think about. There's a video on the 86 Boxing channel of George Byers. We're going to have to dedicate one of these history talks to George Budge Byers, because he was someone who would fight at heavyweight, won the colored middleweight and heavyweight title. And he was a guy who generally weighed around $150, to be honest, but he was a strong, solidly built, slender guy, always in tip-top shape. So he would rise up and fight bigger guys, even though he wasn't there at the weight. So it does make for an interesting thought behind the whole process for sure. To this day, Butte, Montana, they got boxing rings in bars. Okay, good stuff right there. Dan, good stuff right there. Hit up Dan. That's the man about Montana. Dan is the man in Montana. Good stuff right there, Dan. Cool. I've never been to Montana. I'd go there. I'd visit. I'd imagine it'd be very interesting. But yeah, never been. I've talked about it with some people. And, they found a lot of fossils in Montana as well from some of the dinosaurs back in the day. T-Rex, a number of T-Rex fossils have been found there, which is pretty crazy, right? But makes sense, I guess you can say. Also unfair to say I'm anti-Dempsey just for rightfully critiquing his avoidance of grab. Hey, yeah. I guess you can make a point there, Poland Ball, for sure. Andre Rodriguez, salute to you, Andre Rodriguez in the building. Appreciate you dropping by, Andre, as always. Hope things are going well over there across the Atlantic. Great to have you here. Andre says, good evening, Joshua, and everyone in the chat. Salute to Andre Rodriguez, without a doubt. Showing love. Rocky, Kansas was born Rocco Tazo. Interesting name right there, Rocco de Tazo. So yeah, I have to look into Rocky, Kansas more. I have him on a list. I know I've said this a million times. I have him on a list of someone to do a video on, but I have to do a lot more research on his overall career, sort of background and all of that stuff. But I take it he might have been Italian. Is that what that is? Tazo? Looking at it being Tazo, maybe Italian, somewhere in that range or somewhere in that area. Andre Rodriguez says, passing by to wish you all a great show. Have to wake up real early, say I'm on my way to bed. Catch the show on archive tomorrow. All right, salute to you, Andre. Appreciate you dropping in, buddy. Appreciate you dropping in. Hey, you have a good one. Have a great night. Get that sleep. Always good. You need that to function properly for sure. So salute to you being in here, Andre. Poland Ball says, Grab beat 194-pound Bill Brennan. Yep, contender from the time for sure. Mix it up with a lot of top-level heavyweights. Bob Roper was 188, 186-pound Charlie Weinert. I know Charlie Weinert for sure. He was a very solid fighter, very, very solid fighter right there. And got a little pop to him. he mixed it up with a number of top level guys. I believe he started more in the light heavyweight ranks, but rose to heavyweight, certainly, and probably is more commonly known as a heavyweight. But Charlie Weiner, very good boxer right there. Jack Renault, Canadian or Canada's finest. Jack Renault, former Canadian heavyweight champion, certainly one who is regarded in the heavyweight ranks. I think I was chatting with someone. I haven't dove deeply into Jack Renault, but I know he had a career in Hollywood apparently as well. But certainly a heavyweight, and yeah, he falls in line with that. A lot of other people around Dipsy's way. It's not like Grab never fought someone that big. Certainly, yeah. Grab he would mix it up with pretty much any and all varying styles. Um, all varying styles for sure. Peach, everyone says. Andre Rodriguez, salute to you, Andre. Salute once again. Thank you for dropping by, buddy. Great to have you here for the next one for sure. Polar Ball says I favor Dempsey, but a duck is a duck. Gotcha. Yeah, hey, you can. Yeah, that's the thing. It's not a guarantee for Greb for sure. Certainly not a guarantee for Greb, and the success against some of the others doesn't guarantee such against Dempsey. But it would have been very interesting for sure. All I have been reading about the last 2 weeks is Greb and how he was ducked by Dempsey. Really getting sick of it. Got you right there. Debunk it. Debunk it. Well, I think it's hard to debunk or disapprove. So yeah, we're not gonna have any debunking going down. And Dempsey struggled versus most of all the same common opponents they shared, and lost to Willie Meehan, Gene Tunney, whom Greb badly beat. Yeah, Willie Meehan, hey, that was a guy who actually rose up from lighter weights. And there's actually a picture out there with Dempsey and Willie Meehan from when they fought at some point in their rivalry. I think they fought around 5 times, somewhere in that range, with Meehan getting the better of Dempsey. But that being said, Meehan was one of those guys who very solid boxer overall, not a world beater, just a solid contender. As mentioned, rose in the ranks, and he could trouble some guys for sure. He could trouble some guys. Then there were others that, hey, he couldn't really deal with him as much. But if you look at his resume, it's a who's who of boxing right there. Willie Meehan, Willie Fat Boy Meehan is what they called him. Who's who of boxing as far as his resume is concerned. If you don't know him, certainly worth checking out right there. I have him on a list to do a video of as well. Certainly on the list. A lot of people on the list. Gibbons was career 96 wins, 5 losses, 48 KOs. Oh, yeah, it's very solid. Gibbons was top tier in that regard. Top tier. So he was a very, very good boxer. He and his brother both, Mike Gibbons, of middleweight fame. Mike Gibbons was a very solid boxer overall as well. And yeah, I think I've mentioned it, rating Gibbons, Mike a little bit higher, him being the middleweight. But that being said, both of them, two very solid boxers, two tough fighters, two of the greats for sure. And they have very solid resumes that stack up amongst the best in history, stack up against pretty much anyone in history. So the Gibbons brothers, certainly two worth knowing and of note in the history of the sport. Let's see what you mean. I guess the Gibbons brother Blake seems he's only here to shit on Dipsy. Random acoustic thoughts. Salute to you, Random. What's going on, buddy? Random in the building. Says, sup, y'all. Appreciate you dropping by, Random. Random acoustic thoughts. I don't know if you are on or in the mix there, Random, but if you are, hey, you know you can hop on. You know you can Random. See if you're off or you're down. I know we're at the 7:58 mark. But Random Acoustic Thoughts, folks, check out Random Acoustic Thoughts. Done a lot of stuff on a number of the great heavyweights from this period and before. And hey, it's a treat. It's a treat. A lot of good dialogue and get in-depth dialogue on the likes of Sam Langford, who is regarded as the greatest boxer of all times. Certainly one of him, Harry Greb. You know, hey, there you can't go wrong with those two for sure. But a lot of good insight and dialogue there from Random Acoustic Thoughts. It gets into details. He also someone who found one of the fights that hadn't been reported, at least on the major sites. It was went a bit unreported, unrecorded in some sense, though it was documented. And through his research, found such. So more to come for sure in that regard. As a matter of fact, we're going to do another Langford talk for sure. So it'll be a good one. It'll be a good one. But Random Acoustic Thoughts. Salute to you, buddy. Appreciate you dropping by, being in the mix here. So we're talking about some great fights that have taken place on July 4th. Uh, Jack Dempsey's fought on July 4th too. I need to look it up because I forget who he's fought. As a matter of fact, or not Jack Dempsey, but Jack Johnson. I had it down. I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, Johnson Jeffries, July 4th, 1910. Johnson versus Jeffries. We all know that fight, right? Johnson versus Jeffries, Reno, Nevada, July 4th, 1910. This was considered the fight of the century right there. So that's one that is also worth mentioning. Jack Johnson. We all know the deal with him. We all know the deal. So salute to your Random. Doesn't look like Random is gonna be able to hop on, but cool, good stuff. We'll catch him next time. Next time, Random. Acoustic Thoughts. So appreciate it. But Random drop by again. Like and subscribe. Show some love to Random Acoustic Thoughts without a doubt. Let's salute to Bruce Gas, Boxing Jazz in the building. Salute to your Bruce Gas, Boxing Jazz, and more. Again, give Bruce a like and subscribe. Salute to you, Bruce. Appreciate you dropping by, buddy. Bruce is always in the mix, doing great interviews. I got to chat with him last night, I believe that was, right, Bruce? We were talking some boxing, or it might have been the other night. But that being said, Bruce Gas, Boxing Jazz, and more. Definitely a worthy subscribe. Many gems dropped by my man Bruce Gas. So definitely check him out. Definitely check out Bruce Gas, Boxing Jazz, and more. Let's go. I know we have some Offspring Dempsey arguments going on. Salute to you, Flack. Oh, Flack, you're still here in the mix? Flack Boxing, let's go. Salute to you, Bruce. Polo Ball, I'm actually part of the grand conspiracy. I was paid by Dempsey Haters Association to corrupt this live stream with anti-Dempsey propaganda. Oh, yo, so that's what it is there, Polo Ball. You're up there. They paid you to be here. What the heck, man? What the heck? The great Jack Dempsey, former world heavyweight champion, took the title on July 4th, 1919 against Jess Willard in Reno, Nevada. A vicious beating where he used the Dempsey roll to land a combination that sent him down. Of course, back in those days, you didn't have to retreat to a neutral corner. So Dempsey took advantage of such, and every time Willard was starting to get up, he put him right back down. It was just a vicious beating right there. One of the fights that got me into boxing history, just seeing it as it was rolling out. I mentioned this before, of course. Just seeing the way that it went down, those two guys holding it down there, Reno or Toledo, Ohio. You could tell it was hot out there. I mean, it was pretty obvious just even from that footage. And that is going way back to 1919. Just think about that, folks. We have footage of that. And it is one of the vicious beatings in the sport of boxing. And made me a fan of Jack Dempsey, the Manasseh Mauler, who was one of the most popular boxers in the history of the sport. Not without full controversy, of course. There were some fights we did want to see. But certainly when you think about the megastar names in the sport of boxing, Jack Dempsey is one of those guys, one of my favorite boxers in the sport's history right there. And he mixed it up in some big contests, of course, responsible for the first $1 million gate as well as the first $2 million gate. That would be in Carpentier and Tunney, but certainly not without critique or whatever. I would have loved to see him fight Harry Wills for sure. That is one of the fights that I think would have been one of those legendary fights in the history of the sport in itself. A random, hey, you missed some discussions. Random, we've had a number of different things that have all sprung from the actual Dempsey versus Willard contest, which took place, which I was just explaining, and yeah, and then also Dempsey versus Gibbons, which could have essentially been Dempsey versus Harry Greb. And I know we've had discussions about that. That contest did not go down as well. So we had some varying discussions uh, in that regard as well. The vibe says of moderator rating. So watch. Okay, really. Blake Gallimore, I'm down right now, live for all to see. Y'all funny. Alexander, speaking of Lithuanians, what do you all think of the welterweight Montez Stenionis? Love the Montez Stenionis right there, Alexander. Great one to bring up. I think that the Stenionis Virgil Ortiz contest is one of the best fights in boxing. Just knowing what both guys bring to the table. Neither have a back down type attitude. I thought Stanionis showed in his last contest with Raza Batayev that he was a force to be reckoned with. Batayev was hitting him with heavy haymakers, trying his best to get in and break Stanionis, but he was unable to do so. And Stanionis, he didn't back up. He came in, he fought fire with fire, and he was laying into Batayev, who has a very solid chin. He's one of those guys who you could hit him with some of everything, and it doesn't really put a dent in him. But that was a tough contest for both of them overall. Both of them did have swelling and all of that stuff, but Stanionis showed that, hey, he wasn't afraid to get in the pocket and mix it up. So I think he and Virgil Ortiz, they are going to be that is going to be an excellent contest right there, and I look forward to it. One of the best fights in boxing, as far as I'm concerned, there, Alexander. And I know I'm not the only one. Certainly a top 10 fight, potentially top 5 fight in boxing right there. Really have to dive down and think about some of the others, but it is one of the best and has major implications for the 147-pound or welterweight division. So July is a great month for welterweights as far as fight fans are concerned. We're going to see a lot of Ron Ennis is going to be taking on Ruben Villa as well, or Roman Villa. Another very good contest right there. We're on Dempsey. Yes, Dempsey. Yes, we talk about Dempsey. We have to talk about Dempsey. Well, we have to talk about the great Jack Dempsey. Hey, he had a huge fight on July 4th. It's one of the more entertaining fights from a historic standpoint, just seeing him lay wood to Jess Willard, 6'6", 240-pound Jess Willard came in probably underestimating, thinking that this was going to be an easy go for him, but not so fast, my friend, as Lee Corso would say, the great Lee Corso. We all know Lee Corso. We're having a nice combo with Dempsey, but apparently can't critique it without being anti-Dempsey. So on to the next combo. You're sure Grab knocks out Dempsey in one round. No, that doesn't happen right there. That doesn't happen. Oh yeah, you can have fun. Oh yeah, I didn't see this right here. Oh, I'm so behind on these freaking. Oh yeah, it's 8, and that came at 7:36. Holy crap! John, I'm gonna try to get through some of these. John Borelli Dempsey would have knocked out Harry Greb as he did Carpentier in short order. Hey, John, yeah, that might have very well happened right there. That might have very well happened. Might have very well happened. Bruce Gass, 1910. Jack Johnson beats James J. Jeffries on July 4th. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The fight of the century, it was considered at the time. James J. Jeffries coming out of retirement, where he'd been for around 6 years, or at least close to 6 years. And he had to drop over 100 pounds in weight, in lard, and get himself back into fighting condition. I think he ended up around 225 pounds, somewhere around there. And he was going up against Jack Johnson at a time where Jack Johnson was pretty much at the tip of his physical abilities. I mean, he was still, I guess you can say, in his prime for that period to a certain degree, at least. So it was not one that was going to bode too well for James J. Jeffries, excuse me, and we all saw what happened. It went a little longer than probably some would have expected, and that might have been for varying reasons. That said, very good context or very good matchup, and just thinking about it from a historical context and the implications, what it meant from that standpoint. But it would have been even better had it happened while both were at their fighting best. This was a fight that probably should have happened around 1908, 1909, or something like that. And of course, James J. Jeffries, he retired in 1904 or after 1904. So there were many years that were left on the table in his career. And Dipsy came to during this, or not Dipsy, but Jack Johnson came to during this period in which Jeffries was retired. So this was a tough matchup. It wasn't going to happen for Jeffries in that capacity whatsoever. But very good matchup, very interesting fantasy matchup in terms of what people may think. Or think would have happened had the two fought at their best. Both of them at their best. Now, Jeffrey said that Johnson would have beat him on his best day or something. He was quoted to that degree in a newspaper and all that stuff. But we know a lot of fighters say that. But that being said, it would have been very interesting them at their best. There are favorable aspects that would lean towards the sides of both. But very interesting contest for sure. Very interesting contest had the two fought some years prior. I think, yeah, prior to 1904, you would have to give more favor to Jeffries. I just think at that time he had racked up a lot of experience. But around 1904, Jack started to pick it up, and this was when he started to go on his run. So it would have been very interesting. So yeah, timing could have definitely been a major factor. Pulling ball is buzzkill. Can't happen with Grab Dempsey. Nothing happened because they didn't fight. Yeah, they didn't fight. Salute to mom in the mix here. In the mix, for sure. Uh, Rodolfo says, I want to hear a positive thing come out of your mouth about Dempsey, Pulling Yes, Random Kitchen Talk says I rated Dempsey 6th at heavyweight for the first quarter century, which is pretty awesome. Oh yeah, without a doubt. Hey, I don't think that's too bad. First quarter century, I don't think that's too bad right there. Thinking that was a pretty solid era of heavyweights you had out there. Just think about that first quarter century. Just think about that. A lot of great heavyweights that were competing during that period. You had James J. Jeffries in the mix there, Jack Johnson, who we discussed, of course, Sam Langford, Sam McVeigh, Joe Jeanette, Harry Wills is thrown in the mix. A lot of the other guys that we saw or mentioned that they contended with, for the likes of Fred Fulton, Luis Angel Firpo. We're talking about, yeah, there are just so many big time heavyweights there. And even other guys who go a bit obscure. Jeff Clark, battling Jim Johnson was in the mix there. Then other guys we mentioned who are a bit obscure. Bill Brennan, he's another one contender from that period. I know we mentioned him. Frank Moran, another one. Just so many ways you can go there. But yeah, just a number of guys who are out there in the mix. Dan says, hey, Alexander, Rocky Kansas was born in Italy, came to Buffalo age 4, stayed in Buffalo all his life till he died. He is a Buffalo fighter, clear enough. Oh, certainly a Buffalo fighter, without a doubt. Buffalo fighter, indeed. I would give him that. Alexander says, Dempsey also beat me in the fights were 4 rounders. Dempsey that lost to Tunney and lost his reflexes, hadn't fought in 3 years, had suffered blood poisoning stress due to Kern's lawsuit. Oh yeah, certainly that version of Dempsey was not the best of Dempsey, and therefore during that period, a contest between Dempsey and Wills wouldn't have been the best version of Dempsey. That post 1925 contest that was seemingly planned or whatever, but certainly yeah, that was not the best version of Dempsey that fought Gene Tunney. Of course, that's Gene Tunney's best win at heavyweight, and therefore, yeah, I don't rate him as well. He's one of the best, yeah, I guess in general, just period from a boxing perspective. But if you look at his reign at heavyweight, it wasn't a top flight reign. He didn't spend a ton of time there, but certainly that wasn't the best version of Dempsey. Dempsey had spent a lot of time off. He was basically a once a year fighter, a one fight a year type guy, and he had a number of years. There were at least 2 years up until that point where he didn't fight at all during the year. So there were a number of different things, outside interests and everything that played into the overall career of Dempsey at that particular time. So great point right there, Alexander. So yeah, he was kind of just plotting forward against Gene Tunney and only won that one round really, which is that long count round. Yeah, it was a long count too. But that being said, it looked as though Tunney was in his senses, kind of reading what the ref was saying by the time he got up. So uh, that's my 2 cents on it for sure. But certainly not the best version of Dempsey there in that particular stage. But what we saw in 1919, that destructive force that he was, it was big time for sure. And then a few years thereafter, but then things start to wane. But a lot of times with the a lot of times with the heavyweights when they won the title at that particular time, the outside interest took over. Uh, Polar Ball says Dempsey he beat the best light heavyweights on the planet. Light heavyweights who were competing at heavyweight. They were competing at heavyweight, so hey, you can't stand the heat, get out the kitchen, as they say. But many have moved up and fought at heavyweight coming from the lower ranks. There was an opportunity. They couldn't handle it. If you can't stand the heat, get out the kitchen is what I say for sure. But he knocked off some heavyweights as well who were up there, who were contenders for that period. Certainly some others we would have wanted to have seen. But that being said, there could have been. But that being said, yeah, hey, he mixed it up with a number of guys headed to what got him to that status or that shot at Jess Willard. And Willard ducked Fred Fulton. So Dempsey knocked out Fred Fulton in one round. Very underrated heavyweight there. We have a video of Fred Fulton on the channel. So Fulton was knocked out in one round by Dempsey. That would have been a chance for Fulton right there for sure. I think that Fred Fulton would have beat Jess Willard had they fought. Now Willard, he didn't want any problems with Fulton. He fought Rank Moran instead. But that being said, there were promoters who seemingly had some play into that right there. But Dempsey didn't just beat light heavyweights for sure. Fred Fulton, great win right there, especially at the time. Fred Fulton was on a hell of a run, and he was able to pull it off. Dempsey's win over Fulton was epic. Oh, yes, certainly. Certainly. Did he not beat the best light heavyweights? The best light heavyweights who competed at heavyweight for sure. For sure there, Poland Ball. Blake Governor. So I was blocked by Boz for speaking the truth. That would imply he only fought like heavyweights of quality. Okay, let me see. Beating a great light heavyweight, is it a diss to Dempsey when most heavyweights were light heavyweights? Disrespecting saying that. Oh yeah, they were certainly quality fighters, but certainly, yeah, some of them did rise from the light heavyweight ranks, and There were also heavyweights in the mix. Fred Fulton, as mentioned, at the time when he pulled off that win, one of the best wins that you could ask for in the sport at the time, given the run that Fulton was on. And I think Fulton would have been world heavyweight champion had he gotten this shot at Jess Willard rather. Sorry, had Fred Fulton gotten his shot at Jess Willard prior to Dempsey getting the shot, Fred Fulton would have. I have no doubt in my mind that Fred Fulton would have been world heavyweight champion. Now, yeah, Dempsey took him out. And then not only that, Fred Fulton went on another run, racking up win after win, knocking out guys. And then he had to run into Harry Wills, and Harry Wills took him out as well. Levincia Gibbons are unquestionably his best wins. Those are two very good wins. Yeah, I think they're thrown in the mix right there. Those two, probably Faripo and Fred Fulton. Um, yeah, yeah, yeah. Those are. Carpentier is a good one, but certainly, yeah, Dempsey handled Carpentier. Uh, yeah, it wasn't much trouble for him right there. Even though Carpentier got off a little combination. I mean, I heard the video saying that there was some kind of agreement to let it go a few rounds or whatever. But yeah, I don't think Carpentier would have beat Dempsey, regardless of the situation. So certainly, certainly those are amongst his best right there for sure. They are. Mm. Yeah, Carpentier knocked out Levitsky. Oh yeah, arguing Carpentier was better than Gibbons. Hey, I think it could go either way. I think it could go either way in terms of preference right there. It could go either way in terms of preference. Yeah, they both were great for sure. As as Random mentions, they both were great. I think an argument could be made for both. Greb would have been the way too fast. It moved too much for Dempsey to ever catch him. If Dempsey got close, Greb would have smothered him. Greb only stopped one time in 300 fights. Dempsey wouldn't have stopped him. Greb wins a lopsided unanimous decision. Salute to you, Blake. Yeah, that's one way it could have potentially gone right there. There's certainly one way it could have potentially gone, especially when I think about that slow plotting version of Dempsey, like the version of Dempsey that fought Gene Tunney. Yeah, that was not the Dempsey that we saw destroy. That was not the Dempsey we saw destroy Jess Willard. So, yeah, different version of Dempsey in that sense. So, hey, it could have gone that way, especially if we would have fought during that period or that version of him. Now, of course, it could have gone the other way as well with a different version of Dempsey. The young, hungry version of Dempsey who was gunning for a knockout. He could have landed some things and been the second to stop Harry Greb, who was very tough and hard to stop. So not a given right there, but certainly there was a conceivable way where you could see Dempsey, hey, just putting in that work right there. He was a big time puncher without a doubt. So very interesting for sure. Salute filthy boxing hipster. Got muted for some reason. Salute to you. Salute to filthy boxing hipster. Appreciate you dropping in. As always, yeah, not sure what happened right there. I'm in StreamYard, but I'm catching up. I'm trying to catch up at least. There's so many messages out here, but appreciate you dropping in, filthy boxing hipster. Without a doubt, talking about July 4th fights, it always becomes contentious, especially when you bring up some of the big names like Harry Greb, Jack Dempsey, etc. I love it. We get to discuss in detail. Dan, I love Greb. He's the greatest fighter ever. Dempsey is one of the greatest fighters of all time, too, but he is a natural, brutal, great heavyweight, and in their primes, Dempsey most likely win. Yep. Hey, I agree with you right there. At their very best, yeah, Dempsey would have been a handful for even the great Harry Greb, and I think that, yeah, it's certainly conceivable that Dempsey would have been the man to stop the smaller Greb at that particular time. If if prime in, so that's a great point right there, Dan. I lean towards that side as well. That's why I say, hey, there's conceivable ways for, if you really boil it down and dive into it, there are conceivable ways for varying individuals to be able to share their thoughts and everything. Filthy boxing hipster Carpentier knocked out a excuse me, sorry, shot version of Levinsky. This is commonly accepted fact. Cool, cool. Look at newspaper descriptions of the Carpentier Levinsky fight. Good stuff right there. Filthy boxing hustler battling Levinsky. I know Levinsky spent a ton of time, excuse me, at light heavyweight. Former American light heavyweight, world light heavyweight champion, battling Levinsky. Had a crazy amount of fights, an insane amount of fights. So I'd imagine that could have very well been the case right there, because Levinsky, well-traveled boxer. When we say well-traveled boxer, he's one of those. Probably the definition of, just look at his resume and record, who he was in with, the amount of times that he was fighting. Yeah, think of legends, as they say. Think of legends. So that's certainly conceivable right there. Certainly conceivable. 50, not an altar play, not an altar of Poland. That's funny. Uh, uh, butt strong, you or boot strong? What is right there? Oh, filthy boxing hipster. That will soon pass. It's only temporary. Pray for all y'all, bro. This is crazy. This is crazy. Filthy boxing hipster says anyway. Dipsy's best wins are over light heavyweights, and I don't consider that a bad thing. I don't know why he gets so heated over that. Light heavyweights competing at heavyweight. Filthy boxing hipster. Certainly light heavyweights competing at heavyweight, but certainly they started their careers in the lower ranks. That's something. That's something certainly that can be noted. But I mentioned Fred Fulton. Excellent win right there. Excellent win. So there's a mixture of them in there. There's a mixture of them, but good wins nonetheless. He told me that he wanted his name. Well, let's see. It is true, an opinion is definitely not hating, is why we get together as fellow Americans on Independence Day. Good point, pulling ball. Certainly, hey, we can have discussions about it. We can have discussions about it. I told you, Jack Dempsey is one of my favorite boxers of all times. Of all time. Jack Dempsey, the Manasseh Mauler, the biggest star during that period of the 1920s. He was the man in the 1920s. He was the guy, and then even thereafter, his popularity rose to heights that have seldom been seen across any sport. Jack Dempsey, household name at that particular point. So certainly, bring them all. Bring them all. We can talk about them. We can critique them. We can throw whatever out there. I'm going to share my opinion. Hey, and of course, everyone is welcome to share theirs. I'm still going to rock with my man, Jack Dempsey, the Manasseh Mauler, who fought on July 4th, 1919, against Jess Willard in Toledo, Ohio, in one of my favorite fights in history, and just seeing what he was able to do to the bigger, lumbering Jess Willard, who I think took him for granted. Don't take the great Manasseh Mauler for granted. Don't take him for granted. So yeah. Yeah. Not everyone is American. Paul Bright, Dempsey was one of the all-time greats in spite of him drawing the color line. Indeed, Paul Bright. Indeed, he fought John Lester Johnson, but there were certainly some other heavyweights that should have been out there, or he should have competed with, that were out there. One of them, Harry Wills, a fight that we should have seen. Sam Langford was one. Sam Langford was one that was in the mix as well, but he mentioned he wouldn't fight Sam Langford. Now, Sam Langford To be fair, of course, was more on the back end of his career. But that being said, a fight that could have potentially happened, though it would have been not certainly not the best version of Langford, and Dempsey might have stopped him at that particular time. Who knows? Who knows? But Langford was still a formidable force, especially if you're talking 1920s, because that was certainly not the best of Langford there. But Harry Wills, but yeah, that's one of the things that have come up, Paul Bright. You make a good point with the color line. Yeah, there were. I know Dempsey fought John Lester Johnson, but beyond that, who else did he fight? What are the other black fighters out there? I know he was gonna fight Harry Wills, but a lot of roadblocks were thrown in the mix there with Harry Wills. That's a fight that should have happened against Harry Wills. John A. Burt. John says Dempsey ducked no one, and had he fought Wills, he would have put Wills amongst the missing cricketing Paulino Euskadon, who knocked out Wills in 4 rounds in 1927. Yeah, that 1927 version of Wills was without a doubt not the best version of Harry Wills right there. He had even slowed down in fighting himself. You think about it, the fight should have taken place between 1918 and 1922. And that's probably the shelf life on that contest for both of them, because the versions after that were not the best versions of either Harry Wills or Jack Dempsey. So I can attest to that for sure. But certainly that 1927 version of Wills was not a peak version of Harry Wills. If you look at him in his run between 1918 and 1922, I will attest to the fact that I feel that he was the best heavyweight in the world at that particular time. And he would have beat anyone he competed against at that particular time, Dempsey included. And I'm a big fan of Jack Dempsey. So I think that can be misconstrued in terms of that version of Wills there in 1927. Hey, but that's just me. Someone else could view it as a different version of him. He did lose to Paulino Euskadun. It was disqualified against Jack Sharkey as well, but both of these were not the optimal time frames as far as the version of Wills that should have rightfully gotten his shot at the world heavyweight title some years prior to that, considering that Wills hit his prime around 1917, pretty much. He hit his prime around there, 1917, 1918. And it was full steam a go. He was fighting while Dempsey, even when Dempsey won the championship in 1919, if you look at Dempsey, if you look at Will's career when and you look at it from this point of when Dempsey won the championship, you'll see where things start to wane off, because it kind of went parallel with him not getting that shot at Dempsey, even to the point like that fight with Uskandun. Yeah, that was a far gone. That was a version of him that was basically a part-time fighter, to be honest. And then just thinking about the point when he was ready to go, there just were a number of roadblocks that kept getting put in front of Harry Wills, who should have gotten a shot at the title. It's one of those things. And yeah, that was loud. But Blake Gallimore, I'm sure it was mainly Kearns keeping his cash cow safe, but I'm sure Greb beating up Gene Tunney, Tommy Gibbons, and Tommy Lochran sure didn't make Dempsey want to jump into the ring with Greb, certainly, and 100% that the sparring let him know for sure that Greb would knock his ass out. Yeah. I mean, they did spar, certainly. That could change things at varying points, but you never know. Filthy Boxing Hipster says, I agree Wills loses against Jack. Hey, there have been a number who think that Wills would have lost to Jack. Very interesting contest right there. We would have got to see firsthand they had the two fought when the opportunity was there. Check out the video on Harry Wills that is on the 86 Boxing channel. Money wasn't an issue. That blank check stuff is BS. Money was not the issue. Money was not the issue. We could have saw that firsthand, Filthy Boxing Hipster. We could have saw whether or not Jack Dempsey knocked out Harry Wills. That's a good thought. Yeah, that's a good thought, or something to mull over for sure. I don't think that would have been the case, but could it have happened? I'm not gonna be naive and think that it was not at all possible. Jack Dempsey was a force himself. You could certainly concede Jack Dempsey coming out storming, catching Harry Wills cold, maybe dropping him and just pouncing from there. You never know. But that being said, I don't think that would have been the case myself because I could also see Harry Wills imposing his will. And when Jack Dempsey got close to him, tying him up, letting off some uppercuts, catching him with something that sent him down and out, the bigger, stronger Harry Wills. So it makes for an interesting fantasy matchup. Certainly one of the more intriguing fantasy matchups right there. I've seen arguments on both sides. So certainly nothing a guaranteed or foregone conclusion. I'm just sharing my opinion that I think that Harry Wills was the best heavyweight in the world during that period. But hey, Jack Dempsey, he was a hell of a force. I told you, hey, I love what Jack Dempsey had to offer offensively. So there's some offensive measures that would certainly make one think that Jack Dempsey would be the favorite in that contest. So definitely a good one to chat and discuss. Dempsey could only look good against big slow guys. Then he says his best wins were over light heavyweights. Hey, good point right there, Tobias. Good point. uh, Paul Bright, I don't know about that. I'm with you, Paul. I'm with you for sure. Random Style said Dempsey demonstrably avoided certain matchups, but still had a good career. Same as lots of guys. Yeah, we see it from a lot of guys. See it from a lot of guys without a doubt. So sometimes, hey, and the careers are worked in a certain type of way. Dempsey's best wins were over the best light heavyweights in the world, which again is not a bad thing. All right, got your filthy boxing hipster, and some good heavyweights. Some top heavyweights. It's just the fact that he wasn't in the best era for big men. Firpo was good, Fulton was good, but these men don't hold a candle to Gibbons and Levinsky. Gibbons, Levinsky, yeah, two top level greats of all time for sure. Two top level greats of all time, without a doubt. I feel where you're coming from there. But Fulton, I think he's a lot better than given credit for. He unfortunately didn't get the world heavyweight title. The world heavyweight title could have changed things for a lot of people and how they were viewed in history. Fulton was one of those guys who didn't get a shot at it. There were opportunities. Of course, he ran into Dempsey and Wills, of course, during a chance there were opportunity, but he should have had a chance beforehand. Had he won the world heavyweight title, it would have been viewed a lot differently. Many people view Jess Willard differently. I guess if you compare him and put him in fantasy matchups, probably because of the fact that he won the world heavyweight title, but where he ranks amongst the greatest heavyweights of all time, that's a different question. So, but yeah, good point. Hey, good point. Some good points right there. You're making there, filthy boxing hipster. John says, one is speculation to write that Dempsey wired promoter Tex Rickard pleading for Rickard to match him with Will. Two, is it speculation that Rickard repeatedly drew the color line and not Dempsey? Oh, I think that argument could be made for sure. I know that Doc Kearns didn't want the fight to happen. I know that Tex Rickard was also on record saying he didn't want the fight to happen because he didn't want a repeat of the Jack Johnson versus James J. Jeffries contest where there were race riots across the country in the aftermath of that contest. So I know that is something Tex Rickard himself was quoted in the newspapers as stating. So that is for sure the real deal. And I know, as mentioned, Doc Kearns played a big role. If you look at the video I did on Harry Wills, speaking of such, yeah, those two played a major role in it. So it wasn't just all Dempsey for sure. I feel that if Dempsey wanted to make the fight happen, he could have said, bar none, hey, I don't care. Let's do this. The fans are clamoring for it. We have the money. Let's make it happen. But we can say that about a lot of fighters in fights, certainly. So it's not just solely on Dempsey in that regard. So you make a good point right there, John. It wasn't on him in totality, but that would have been a fight. Certainly, I do know that there was a promoter who the money was there. As mentioned, there was going to be $50,000 for Harry Wills and $150,000 for Actually, Jack Dempsey. At one point, it was going to be Bulls 30 acres. At one point, they were talking about Montreal. So there were varying points when it was seemingly going to happen, but it just didn't happen. Yeah, a lot of things came into play for sure. A lot of things came into play. Let me see. Alexander said Tex Ricker was why there was no Dipsy Wills fight. At least twice the fight was signed. Wills even collected 50,000 guaranteed on one of the contracts. That is true. That is without a doubt true right there. So yeah, it wasn't solely Dipsy. It wasn't solely Dipsy's fault that it didn't happen without a doubt. But it certainly should have happened. It certainly should have happened. And as we've seen, barring any cross promotional stuff, they can make it happen. They were going to make it happen at one point. They said that Harry Wills had to fight these guys in a tournament, which was like Luis Sandro Firpo, Bartley Madden was a part of this tournament, etc. So even even Tex Rickard came too. He came too. So 50 boxing, Rickard drew the color line. Dipsy tried getting the fight made. Yeah, he certainly tried to get it made at some points, but it didn't get made. It didn't get made. Yeah, there are varying stories out there. There are varying stories out there for sure, or varying reasons. Ultimately, it didn't get made, but there were some reasons. There are varying reasons as to why it did and why it didn't, and some of them can be trumped. It wasn't a money issue, like the notion that the money was not there or the demand wasn't right. There wasn't there. I can link to varying journalists from the time who will counteract that notion. So certainly you could vary. Grab KO Gunboat in the first round. Good stuff right there, Dan. Gunboat Smith, another well-traveled heavyweight right there, who's in with some of everyone. Tall guy, about 6'2", but he was more on the leaner side in some sense. He wasn't a heavy guy, so that's one of the things. But Gumbo Smith, certainly a well-traveled heavyweight right there, who was in with a lot of top-level guys. 3, is it speculation that Wills and Dempsey were under contract to fight in Chicago on September 6th with a limit in a 10-round battle with Luis Sandro Firpo on September 11th, 1924? That Wills and Dempsey were under contract to fight in Chicago on September 6th. The women in a 10-round battle. Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't think it's speculation. I know that both of them fought Firpo. Both of them beat Firpo. So, no, I don't think that's speculation. The boss, somehow having Jack Kearns as the manager helped Dempsey win. LOL. That is Blake's assessment anyway. Dempsey improved a lot early on. He lost quite a lot of fights. Yeah, there were some varying ones there. Meehan was a short guy who was only a heavyweight because he was overweight. Yep, that is true. After what I read, he was 5'9". Yep, he kind of went up in weight, put on a lot of weight, certainly. Yeah, that's why they called him Fat Boy, or he got the nickname Fat Boy Meehan. Yeah, he didn't go about it in sort of some structured manner. Yeah, I think it was just, hey, he kept packing the weight on for sure. Yeah, how would y'all see Jeffries Dempsey going? Very interesting fight right there. Jeffries versus Dempsey. Very interesting fight. Certainly the offensive aspect might lie in favor of Jack Dempsey, the Manasseh Mauler. It'd all be a matter of whether he's able to get Jeffries out of there in a similar capacity to what he was able to do with Willard, Fulton, some other guys who are bigger, though Jeffries isn't as big as them. Jeffries has had a great deal of mass and kind of girth to him, and he was very strong, and he also had great endurance, and he could withstand some punishment. So you'd have to think that the longer the fight goes, if Dempsey isn't able to get Jeffries out of there, then things may play more into Jeffries' favor. We saw that with a number of guys, even some of the smaller guys he took on, the likes of Corbett and Fitzsimmons. they had the better of the early go, but as the rounds went on, especially if you're talking if it's something in the 25 round range, Jeffries, he was just someone, if you couldn't get him out of there, then you weren't going to get him out of there. And that would certainly play into Jeffries' favor. So I think that there are certainly conceivable ways in which both win. A longer fight, I would feel that that's more in the favor of James J. Jeffries. Shorter fight, I would think that Jack Dempsey pulled off one of those gung ho offense first stoppages that forced the referee in, cuts or something, or sent him down and out. But certainly James J. Jeffries, he'd be a tough piece to kind of a tough puzzle piece to match right there. Just thinking about it, and that's him against pretty much anyone with Jeffries because yeah, he wasn't overly skilled or anything of that nature. He just was just a force. You had big punching Jack Sharkey, not Jack Sharkey, but Tom Sharkey, who was shorter in height, but a stocky guy who had a big punch, evident of his knockouts and some of the knockouts he got over some of the other heavyweights during that period. But with him, similar situation. He couldn't take Jeffries out, and therefore he lost on the cards each time because eventually Jeffries, that size, strength, and endurance came into the fold, and it was tough for him. So that would be a good one right there, Filthy Boxing Hipster. Very tough one. I'd be interested in knowing what others thought of that as well. I think, yeah, it's a battle of. I think the shorter fight plays into Dempsey's favor. A longer fight plays into Jeffrey's favor. That's what I think for sure. But an interesting one. John says, is it speculation that essentially 1 year earlier, Dempsey had slaughtered Luis Firpo on September 4th, 1923, flooring Firpo 9 times in 2 rounds? No, that was hey, yeah, we were mentioning that a little bit earlier. A hell of a fight right there. Certainly Dempsey versus Firpo. Man, he was bringing it to Firpo was bringing it to him, and Dempsey, hey, he said no, hey, or Dempsey was bringing it to Firpo, and Firpo was like no, and he came back a little bit, dropped Dempsey, sent him out of the ring, but hey, Dempsey was like back in the mix and took him out, sent him down and out for the count there. I believe it was the second round there. So they go this. Hey, that was a very that version of Dempsey, yeah, aggressive and just in the mix for sure. So he would have been tough sledding for anyone. So that's what makes it very intriguing. A matchup between he and Wills, a matchup between he and Minnie, even Greb, for instance, in terms of Greb being able to withstand that type of force for sure, because that would have been a lot to deal with, without a doubt. Paul Bright said John is the complete opposite of Blake. Oh yes, without a doubt. And what about Bill Brennan? How come nobody brings that win up as a good win for Dempsey? Oh yeah, yeah, that's a good one. Hey, Dempsey or Bill Brennan, tough contender for the time. Certainly one worthwhile right there, Bob. Good point. But yeah, that is a good one. Bill Brennan was in and mixed it up with a number of the top heavyweights during that period. Tough contender right there. So that's, I think that kind of gives him his just due being a tough contender in an era with, there were some pretty solid heavyweights that were out there. There were some solid heavyweights. So he mixed it up with a number of top level guys as mentioned. So that's a good one. So yeah, I think that would rank up there, certainly. Certainly. True heavyweight, certainly. Good point right there, Tobias. That is a good one. They met Brennan twice, once before he won the title. Oh yeah, beat him twice. Yep. Paul Bright, back in Dipsy's era, there were only 8 weight classes. Oh yeah. The Vaz attack. Let me see. Okay, getting through a number of these comments for sure. 6 or something. Yeah, I think it was around 8 in that period. I would have to think back, look at it. Brennan is a good win for Jack, but Grab beat him 4 times. Oh yeah. Hey, Greb was a force. No way around it right there. Philly Boston hustler, hipster. I mean, no way around it. Hey, there's no way around it, folks. Greb was an absolute force. He's a rare fighter amongst the rare fighters. So yeah, it's hard to. Hey, Greb, he was capable pretty much of beating anybody. He was capable of beating anybody any way you slice it. So make some great points right there. Uh, capable of capable of beating pretty much anyone. That's something we could say for sure. In Grab class, given the next two matches they had, including the title eliminator, yeah, without a doubt, yeah, Grab, very rare fighter right there. That's what makes it so intriguing. So there are so many scenarios that could go down in a fight. There's no one perfect answer, one perfect scenario. There are so many different scenarios that could be thrown in the mix. But you're right, Harry Grab. I mean, if we really look at it, I mean, he's one of those fighters who's very much capable of beating any fighter in history when you just look at it from you look at it from a micro standpoint. If you or look at it from a macro standpoint, you take it more at the micro level, dive down into it. Certainly, you can get into the particulars of a particular fighter, certain traits, and then yeah, would sway and lean things in different ways. Of course, so that's what makes it very intriguing, very interesting. Um, but certainly, yeah, that would be altered with some heavyweights and things of that nature. But that being said, just thinking about the period and those guys he was competing with, many of the best in the history of the sport, he showed that he was very much capable. And yeah, so if you went with Greb in any matchup, I mean, not necessarily a bad pick. Not necessarily a bad pick at all, without a doubt. John says 8. Is it speculation that Jack Sharkey beat Harry Wills in 1926? Nope, not speculation at all. Jack Sharkey did get a win. Apparently, it was a disqualification of some type. I wish we had video of it to get a true understanding of what went down. But apparently, it was a disqualification. But as I mentioned, yeah, by that time, yeah, this was not the best version of. I think that we wouldn't have got the best version of Harry Wills or Jack Dempsey. The fight had pretty much expired, sort of like Mayweather Pacquiao. You could argue Spence Crawford, though they're a little bit more, but that should be a good fight based on when we last seen him. But by that time, Jack Dempsey was in the years prior to that, there were two of those years where he didn't even fight in a year. So I don't know that we would have gotten the best version of Jack Dempsey. And at that time, that's when everything started to slow down for Harry Wills as far as his time there forward. And you can look at the record and see so. So take my appreciation. You all appreciate it. Prime Sharkey was a menace, John. Yeah, Jack Sharkey, hey, he had some ups and downs in his career, but he was a very good boxer, without a doubt. Former world heavyweight champion. And he mixed it up with a lot of top level fighters. And he was one of those guys, hey, he would fight anyone. Got to give him props for that. Jack Sharkey, that is. Got to give him props for that. He would mix it up. He was a truly part of that mixture that started the process of when the heavyweight champion, they pretty much fought anyone. He was a part of that. And we saw that by virtue of who he competed against as he went on. 9, is it speculation that Jack Dempsey knocked out Jack Sharkey in 1927? Certainly not. You're going in there, John. Hey, I'm on Dempsey's side there, John. I'm on Dempsey's side. He's one of my top flight heavyweights right there. One of my favorites of all time. So certainly it's not speculation. He knocked out Jack Sharkey. Now Sharkey was had a little lapse in judgment at that time, but protect yourself at all times. Lapse in judgment right there. We saw that with Ted Kid Lewis as well when he fought George Carpentier. He had a lapse in judgment, and it cost him dearly. So that's another one of those situations right there with Jack Sharkey. But yeah, hey, either way you slice it, good win right there for Dempsey. Good win, without a doubt. Woo, July 4th, Dempsey kills Willard. One of the worst beatdowns, worst ever. I told you that's one of the ones that got me into the history of boxing, just seeing the ferociousness that was Jack Dempsey. One Jack Dempsey on that particular day, man, that was the man right there. He took heavyweight to a new height. Just seeing that offensive version of him, just pure complete destruction, David and Goliath type situation right there. And I think that's what shifted heavyweight and took it to, or at least was a big piece of it going to where it was now. Because prior to that, of course, you hadn't seen heavyweights that fought with that type of ferocity. Uh, of course, Jack Dempsey had, or Jack Johnson had become more of a defensive fighter. Jess Willard, he didn't fight much, of course. He had a draw with Frank Moran. Outside of that, that was his second time defending the title. And prior to that, yeah, he was not an exciting fighter like that or to that degree. And of course, you had Jeffries, you had Fitzsimmons, Tommy Burns. He was the little firecracker, the little giant from Hanover. He traveled and all that stuff, but certainly still the smallest heavyweight in boxing history. But just seeing Dempsey, then prior to that, of course, Fitzsimmons, etc. Just we didn't have on video any of those contests that look to the degree of what went down with Jack Dempsey versus Jess Willard. So therefore, man, that was like the staple that sent it to a new height right there. And Dempsey became a household name eventually and became a megastar, unlike any we've seen. They mentioned stories of John L. Sullivan, him being an offensive, very offensive, explosive fighter in some regards and all. But that being said, we don't have any video of him, so we can read the stories for sure. But when it comes to Jack Dempsey, we could see it firsthand. You have to think that added to the man, the legend himself, the Manasseh Mauler, and made him one of the most popular boxers in the history of the sport. As mentioned, from an 86 boxing perspective, one of my favorite boxers, a favorite of Iron Mike Tyson, another one of my favorite boxers right there, probably my favorite, period. Iron Mike Tyson, he took some of that mystique of Jack Dempsey with no socks, with the tapered cut. And yeah, Dempsey, man, enigma. He is certainly one in the sport. When you think about the great heavyweights of all time, Jack Dempsey has to be mentioned. He is one of those. So big time for sure. Good point there, flag boxing. If anyone wants to see modern boxer in 1927, just watch Jack Sharkey versus Maloney. Insane head movement. Cool. Good stuff right there. Filthy boxing hipster dropping that nugget. Dropping that nugget without a doubt. Check that out, folks. Jack Sharkey. The boss, he did knock out at least once. Yeah. For Jess. Oh, yeah. He gave it to Jess. Doesn't help being 6'7" if you can't defend yourself. Without a doubt. I want to give Dempsey more credit for the Sharkey win, but it's kind of hard knowing Sharkey looked at the ref before the KO. Yeah, that did happen. That certainly did happen. He had a mental lapse in judgment. That's why I referred it to. We saw the same thing on film with Ted Kid Lewis. Hey, that's why they say protect yourself at all times. Don't go complaining to the ref. The ref can't do anything for you in that moment. If the fists are swinging, I mean, yeah, that was one of those situations. Hey, but goes down as a dub for Jack Dempsey. But yeah, you're right. He had a lapse in judgment. Sharkey would be his best heavyweight if it didn't happen. Hey, still a dub there, 50 boxing hipster. Sharkey was asked, would Dempsey have beaten Wills or Lewis? Answered that even in over the hill, Jack Dempsey would have knocked out both Wills and Lewis. Good to go. By that same token, Jack Dempsey said he wanted no problems with in over the hill or past his prime. Sam Langford said he feared him. So you can say that. As mentioned, Jack Johnson or James J. Jeffrey said that Jack Johnson would have beaten him on any day. I don't know. Sam Langford said that he wouldn't have beat Jim Jeffries. So some of those stories sometimes can be taken with a grain of salt, or some of those quotes and things of that nature. But that being said, they are great things to have and thrown in the mix there. But I don't know. That wasn't the best version of Harry Wills as mentioned. So who knows? Who knows? All right, John, you're getting ahead of yourself. You think Dempsey could have beaten Lewis? Oh yeah, yeah, right. But yeah, that would have been an interesting one right there. Yeah, I would have favored Joe Louis for sure, but certainly offensive Jack Dempsey would have made it. He would have made it tough. Uh, Lewis had been hit by some guys. He's taking some shots for sure, and you got to think from an offensive standpoint. Jack Dempsey has enough to trouble him, but yeah, I favor Joe Louis all day. Devastating puncher, true devastating puncher right there. Technique wise, I think he would have done what was needed. Flat, salute flat. Greatest upset unquestionably in history happened July 4th. We beat the shit out of the British against 1,001 odds to become the greatest world champion USA. Good stuff right there. Good stuff, Dan, without a doubt. Dempsey had a chance against Lewis, but I'd favor Lewis. Yeah, same with you, filthy boxing hipster. Same here. He had a chance, without a doubt. The Manasseh Mala, offensive prowess. Yeah, offense could be troubling for sure. But yeah, I too, I would favor Joe Louis. Just total package wise. Hey, these fireworks are starting to heat up out here. Um, you're gonna go into the bench. Flag Bob, I have to know, what country are you from? Norway, Bosnia originally. Yes, sir. 15, Dipsy and Harry Wills signed a contract to fight. Harry Wills received 50,000 upon signing, and Dipsy was to receive 300,000. And this installment of as the initial installment, a million. Let's see, 300,000 as the initial installment, a million. Hmm. Yeah, I know of them signing and receiving 50,000. I don't remember a $1 million purse guaranteed for Dempsey. That would have been a major amount at that time. I don't think it would have been $1 million. I don't know of that right there, John. I don't know if that amount that you're listing there, $1 million, which would have been a record at the time if you think about it, because of the fact that the first $1 million gate didn't happen until 1921. So I don't perceive Dempsey getting a $1 million guarantee by anyone. What I recorded, what I know for sure that I can tie back to in source is him getting $100,000 guaranteed, while uh, Wills was getting 50,000. I don't know about $1 million and the 300,000, because if you think about it, um, yeah, that would have been far beyond what any boxer would have ever had received at that particular point, as far as $1 million purse. And as mentioned, they had just gotten to $1 million gate. Um, so yeah, I'm not sure of that one right there. Or maybe someone knows. I don't recall that one. I don't recall that one. Promoter attempted to give Jack Dempsey a check for 20,000, and when Dempsey insisted that Fitzsimmons go to the bank for him to collect it, which he was forced Fitzsimmons to do, the $25,000 check bounced. Yeah, I've heard that right there. I couldn't find anything to substantiate such, John. That is something that I've heard. If you can find that and link that, please link that to where we have some kind of definitive source for that information right there, because in my research and looking at that, and I'm not saying it didn't happen, all I know is I wasn't able to find anything to substantiate a check bouncing for Jack Dempsey in an attempt to cash in a check for a fight with Harry Wills or something like that, and that being the reason. I know that what's his name? Bert Sugar mentioned that in one of those little boxing videos or whatever. But I know in looking through and researching it myself, I couldn't find such. I couldn't find anything tied to a check bouncing. Now, that doesn't mean that it didn't happen. I just couldn't find it myself. Maybe I didn't look hard enough, because I was doing a video on Harry Wills. But that being said, hey, if that can be sourced, please do, because I want to make sure to correct my saying, because I've been saying here for the last several months, maybe a year, that I can't find anything about that check bouncing situation or story. So I would certainly like to know, without a doubt. So Please, if someone has more information on that, let me know. Joe Meshley, Buffalo Fires, Jimmy Slattery, for sure, for sure. Me and win over Dipsy more impressive than Tunney. Yeah, certainly, certainly. Yeah, Willie Meehan, man. Don't sleep on Willie Meehan. He was in there with some tough cookies. Fulton Gummo Smith, Misk, Brennan Furpo. Oh, yeah, Billy Misk. I forgot about that old Billy Misk, the St. Paul Thunderbolt. Let me see, John Dipsy knocked Fred Fulton out in 28 seconds. Great win right there. Hell of a win. Hell of a knockout right there. 28 seconds. If you look at the run that Faripo was on at that particular time, or not Faripo, but Fulton was on at that particular time, it's crazy. 70s was most certainly a golden era without a doubt. There, Paul Bright. Uh, John says, thanks for the opening mind. Hey, anytime, John. Appreciate it, buddy. Appreciate it. Hey, this is all great having the discussion. This is what we like to dive into, the histrionics of things. So thinking about the history aspect, you got to take a different lens, or you got to put a lens on it, a magnifying lens. Just kind of look at the particulars and detail. It makes things very interesting from a discussion standpoint. Most certainly, Dipsy is one of the only few heavyweights who, on any given day, could have beaten anyone. A lot of greats like Arcel, Tyson, say Dipsy smashed any heavyweight ever in his prime. Hey, you're right. You're right about that, Dan. On any given day. Yeah, say what you want about Dempsey, but certainly he had the tool set in terms of just the overall makeup to be one of those guys who, on any given day, he could lay into anyone for sure. So that's the beauty of it. And just thinking about it and looking back on him, certainly he was one of those guys who had that type of makeup without a doubt. And that's one of the reasons that, hey, I became to had a lot of love for Jack Dempsey. Jack Dempsey. All these guys hating on Dempsey. I know it's tight. The boxing story and funny. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, without a doubt. Paulino, the Basque wood chopper, without a doubt. Hey, one of my favorites. Someone who mixed it up with my man Max Bear. Max Bear, the Livermore Lariper. Paulino mixed it up with him. So I got a lot of love for Paulino. Never a world heavyweight champion, never a world champion, but one of those guys that can contend in any era. The Basque wood chopper, without a doubt. From Spain, if you didn't know. So Paulino, tough dude right there. Tough and rugged. He can box. Let me see what other one. Whatever. Would you please shut the guys' commentary off? Mankind, he does. This how I grew up with a kick. Mankind, who was Mankind? Was Mankind in the comments? Harry Wills has also lost one decision in the entire career because it's in 102 fights. That was KO 5 times. George Kid Cotton, yep, early on. Yeah, George Kid Cotton. He was one of those guys who was a sparring partner for many. Sam Langford, of course, yep, battling Jim Johnson, Paulino Uskandun. Yeah, hey, that's tough right there. You're right. That did happen. Yeah, Sam Langford, man. Crazy. Sam freaking Langford. Certainly. But yeah, Uskadun was a beast right there. But yeah, hey, you make a good point there, John. But I don't mess around and waste boxing time. Lucky most boxers that time look ridiculous the way they carry themselves in the ring and the way they punches. Hey, it all can vary. Hello, all. I read a Dempsey biography. Jack Dempsey knew Babe Ruth, and the Babe was jealous that Jack made more money than him. Without a doubt. Look at the 1920s. Jack Dempsey was the man. He was the cash cow. That term is thrown around in boxing, no doubt about it. The ultimate cash cow, Jack Dempsey. Just thinking about that particular time, you had Babe Ruth, and I think Red Grange was his contemporary in terms of thinking about some other sports. He made more money than all of them, without a doubt. Babe Ruth was another mega star, but Dempsey was the man. The heavyweight division was where the money was at. Yeah, yeah. Dempsey was the first boxer to make that kind of money, obviously. Yep, John L. Sullivan, he made over $1 million in his career, they estimate. So John L. Sullivan made a great deal of money, but Dempsey took it to a new level. But when you factor in inflation and all that stuff, John L. Sullivan, he was another one who made a crazy amount of money during his period, during his time in the reign as well. So appreciate you being here, Mark Bergeron. In other words, Jack Dempsey was bigger than baseball, without a doubt. He was. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Peace and blessing to you, Paul. Definitely gonna catch you. Matter of fact, yeah, my computer's about to die. I'm on this laptop, as a matter of fact, so I'm gonna have to get out of here myself here shortly. For sure, it's gonna die on me anyway. I don't have it down here. Alexander, just my opinion, Jesse would have beat a slow guy like Jeffries into stew meat in a modern 10 fought 15 rounds of left right hand combination. All right, feel you there, Alexander. Certainly possible right there. Certainly possible. Millie Hen, Josh, that son of Kali. It was Willie Me and Josh, the son of Kali. Okay, gotcha. This was a killer and huge, fast, fluid puncher, ferocity and skill. Lean and mean. He's one of the very best of all time. Not many, if any, in the prime can beat him. Without a doubt, there, Dan. Yeah, he was a handful, without a doubt. True beast. Hey, and just offensive powerhouse for sure. You can keep using Grab as an argument all the time. The guy's bringing on the skills. Okay, good night. Good night. Then Blake Grab beat Brennan every round of all four fights. Dempsey said Brennan was the toughest fight he had ever been in at the time. Yeah, hey, good point right there. Hey, it showed you. Hey, styles make fights, as they say, but it shows you. Hey, Grab was a handful, man, for anyone. When I use the term is speculation, I'm doing that in tongue in cheek. I'm emphasizing the fact that it can be recognized, aware of consideration of boxing history. Hey, John, yeah, good stuff right there, John. Good stuff. Good stuff. Appreciate it. Hey, clarification right there. Alexander, I always thought that Jack Sharkey 1925 could have beaten any heavyweight in those years. When he did win the title, the Boston Gob was a disappointment. The Boston Gob. I have a video on him and Jack Sharkey. Want to do a bigger video or well, not him and Jack Sharkey, but him and Max Schmeling, that low blow fight and where Smelling won the title via low blow. But yeah, Jack Sharkey, man, a very good boxer right there. He gets underrated. I guess you can say underrated somewhat because he doesn't get mentioned a ton, really. More sort of like one of those past two boxers that kind of go over his story. But certainly he won, who was willing to challenge himself against anyone, mix it up with the best, without a doubt. And that's what he did in his career. I read that Jack Sharkey was the best boxer ever from the neck down. Good stuff, good stuff. I looked up and saw the performance. William Muldoon called Sharkey the best fighter in the world from the neck down. That is pretty funny. Muldoon, we know he was around with the best of the best. He was around in the times of Sullivan, Peter Jackson, all of them. So, hey, that says a lot right there. But Brennan laughed at the notion that Dipsy, those could beat Greb, saying all his money would be going to Greb. Okay. Brennan laughed at that notion. All right, good stuff right there, Blake. Hey, I think that ties into something. Hey, many knew of Greb's prowess and what he could do out there for sure. Did some search in 1919. Jack Dipsy KO3 Willard Bayview Arena, Toledo, Ohio, Bayview Park Arena, big time. Johnson versus Jeffries was on July 4th. There was another one from Johnson as well. I'm trying to think, who did Johnson fight on July 4th? Might have been Fireman Jim Flynn. I think he fought Fireman Jim Flynn on July 4th as well. We know this is the fight where Flynn headbutted him a bunch of times and he was disqualified. So I think that went down on July 4th as well. The Livermore Larper, Max Bear. Yep. Dipsy trained Bear, thought he was the best he ever saw. Without a doubt. In this book, they talk about that relationship a great deal. They talk about Dipsy. Yeah, him being a promoter at the time, he was still in fighting shape. He still could have gone rounds at that particular time. And Max Bear was one of the sort of prodigies or his proteges in some sense. So great point right there, Dan. Bear was a beast, man, big time puncher. And he didn't, come up boxing or anything. So it was just like a natural thing for him. He had natural power and pop. Blake, I disagree about Dempsey. He fought one dimensional, and Doc Kearns handpicked his opponents to make him look better. All right, I feel you there. Blake. I feel you for sure. Tim Wow, Dempsey would never beat Jeffries, and Jack said so. Good stuff there, Tim Wow. Hey, I think that's a tough one. That's a tough one. James J. Jeffries, yeah, it's a man that was hard to get out of there. You look at his resume; he didn't have a ton of fights, but certainly All of his fights were pretty much elite level fights, and a hard man to get out of there without a doubt. Hard one to tough it out against. He just had that endurance, strength, and he wasn't the best boxer, but hey, he knew enough. He could mix it up and do what worked in his favor for sure. And he rough you up on the inside. I asked Sharkey, Fitzsimmons, Corbett, Hank Griffin, underrated contender from that time, one of the black heavyweights that mixed it up with Jeffries. I know he sparred with him as well, and including Bob Armstrong. So Jeffries, man, he was battle hardened, battle tough, and had the competition in the back. So tough guy to get out there and tough guy to beat. Just thinking about it and conceiving it. Yeah, Dan says, yeah, Jeffries might be the guy to beat Dipsy. Certainly. Do one podcast on Peter Jackson. Okay, cool. We're gonna do one on the Black Prince. Mark, appreciate you. I'm gonna set that one up. Maybe kind of get that in this week because yeah, there's a video out there on the channel that we've done, and of course in this latest John L. Sullivan video, we'll get into some of the details of that potential fight happening, like down to some of the finer points. So good call right there, Mark. Definitely gonna do so. Appreciate you, buddy, dropping in. Appreciate everyone who's dropped in at this particular point. Get ready to call this thing a night. This computer's gonna die anyway. I'm gonna try to get it into my main computer at some point. Here, got to get a wired keyboard. Where can I find a wired keyboard? I may just have to get one. I always had the impression that Max didn't care much for boxing and always preferred acting. Who could blame him though? Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, he wasn't a big fan of the brutality of it. Contrary to belief, he just kind of did it for the money, I guess you can say. But yeah, acting was definitely his chops. But he did not like boxing and hurting people in that sense. So, and that's why you always saw him being a jovial guy out there and training. Many say not taking it serious because he didn't take it too serious in that sense. Just one of those guys who came along. Boxing chose him, I guess you can say. Yeah, wanted to go out there and pulverize with perfect, powerful, fast, precise KO smashes. Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, without a doubt. I don't think Diffie was one dimensional for sure. Certainly, he had some traits that could be exploited, without a doubt. But certainly, I think, I definitely don't think he was just plain one dimensional. I think he had some tools in the tool shed that could see him through on his best day against the best of the best. But definitely, there are things that could be exploited. There are things that could be exploited in many fighters. Some fighters did things the wrong way. Muhammad Ali, he had his hands down. That's my favorite heavyweight of all time, or at least my top heavyweight of all time, who I regard as the best heavyweight of all time. There were some things you could see that could potentially be exploited, but certainly doing so was a whole different story. Being able to do so was an entirely different story. You know, you can see it, conceive it, but doing it, that's between you and the man, mano y mano. They get in the ring, they step there together. And that's a dynamic changer. That mental aspect that comes into the fold as well. So hard to say. But hey, this has been a great discussion, intense discussion. We had a lot of back and forth. We had agreements, disagreements, probably more disagreements than agreements. But hey, that's what it's about when we're talking about the history of the sport. That's what we need, more of that. So best believe that it's not going to stop. I appreciate everyone who dropped by here. Every single one of you. This has been great. This has added to the value of discussion. And I'm sure that we'll keep this going in the comments. And this may be an offspring to many more discussions. We're going to do something that you suggested, Mark, on the great Black Prince, Peter Jackson, without a doubt. So that will be one that is coming up. Real quick, Mark says Max Baer did take it serious once at least with Max Milling. Oh, yeah, that is right. That night, not many would have beaten him, in my honest opinion. Certainly, you're right. He knew the implications, the stakes that were at hand in that particular fight, for sure. For sure, he knew the implications right there. So that is a good one to point out there, Mark, for sure. But man, this has been great. Appreciate you, hey John. Appreciate you. Hey, thank you, John. Hey, appreciate you dropping in a lot of those comments and all that stuff. Sparks a ton of intrigue. Sparks a ton of discussion. But this has been great, man. This has been great. Hey, salute to you, Dan, Tim, as well. History of the sport. Don't forget the past. Hey, we can't. Hey, yeah, at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, highlighting the history. There are going to be some varying opinions. Some may be outlandish. But that being said, we're talking about the history of the sport. And boxing has one of the deepest histories. So we can dive into that on so many different fronts. It doesn't end here, certainly. We're going to be back in the mix without a doubt. And we're going to bring up more. So come ready with the sword sharpened, battle hardened. This got us battle hardened. Dempsey, woo, that's a subject right there, especially when you mix in Dempsey and Grab. Oh, that brings out the fanfare for sure. So it won't end here. We will do more, but appreciate everyone for being in here. And of course, happy Independence Day, 4th of July for those celebrating. Enjoy. The fireworks are going off right here, right now, and I'm sure it's about to pick up from this time forward. So, yes, God bless America. God bless you all. Have a good night, everyone, and we'll see you